Imagine a world where you could disappear for 10 hours and no one could track you. A world where your mistakes weren't recorded on a permanent digital cloud, but were simply lessons learned in the dirt. This was the reality for Generation X, the Latchkey generation. Born between 1965 and 1980, this group possesses a psychological blueprint unlike any other. They are the bridge between the analog and the digital, the last humans to know what it feels like to live entirely offline. But beneath their famous whatever exterior lies a complex architecture of extreme self-reliance, deeply rooted cynicism, and a rare form of strategic independence. Today, we are opening the window into the Gen X mind to reveal why they are the middle child of history and how their unique upbringing made them the most resilient generation alive. We're going to peel back the layers of the latchkey brain and see why their offline advantage is actually a form of high-tier social intelligence. Welcome to Dong Psychology. In the vast landscape of generational psychology, Gen X is often the invisible generation, sandwiched between the massive baby boomers and the digital native millennials. But from a psychological standpoint, they are a fascinating case study in neural sophistication. They were raised in an era of rapid social change and parentification, often returning to empty houses and making their own dinner while their parents worked a process that forced them to grow up too fast. This upbringing didn't just make them independent, it hardwired self-reliance into their DNA. In this deep dive, we are looking through the glass at the Latchkey Blueprint, the offline advantage, the Cynical Shield, and the resilient parent. We will explore how their quiet winning style allows them to move through the world without needing the constant validation of the digital crowd. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Gen X doesn't just survive chaos, they thrive in it. Let's look through the window. The foundational psychological trait of Generation X is forced independence. They were the first generation of latchkey kids' children who wore their house keys on a string around their necks because no one was home to let them in. Because they were often left to their own devices, they developed a sense of hyper-responsibility at a very young age. Psychologically, this is known as parentification, a state where a child takes on adult, emotional, or physical burdens before they are ready. While this can lead to emotional burnout later in life, it also created a generation of fixers. If something breaks, a Gen X individual doesn't wait for a manual or a social media tutorial. They have a repair kit instinct. They learned early on that help wasn't coming, so they became the help. This created a quiet setter in their psychology, a belief that they are the only ones they can truly rely on. This is a form of traumatic intelligence, a rare form of smart forged in fire, where the brain overclocks itself to recognize patterns and predict outcomes to stay safe. When you see a Gen X person handle a crisis with total calm, you aren't seeing lack of emotion. You're seeing a brain that was trained to handle worst-case scenarios before they hit puberty. Gen X is the last generation to possess life offline psychology. They developed their social intelligence in face-to-face interactions where you couldn't unfriend someone with a button. This environment forced them to develop an elite ability to read microexpressions and tone shifts in real time. Neuroscience tells us that people with high intelligence often have heightened sensory processing. For Gen X, this was trained in the streets and playgrounds, not through a screen. They possess a X-ray vision. For social dynamics, they can walk into a room and instantly feel the tension or detect a lie. Because their childhoods weren't curated for an audience, they have a higher tolerance for metacognition, thinking about their own thinking, without the noise of constant external feedback. This makes them the ultimate self-sufficient introverts. They don't need the dopamine trap of digital likes to feel successful. They find validation in their own results, often choosing to win quietly in total silence to avoid social sabotage. Their offline advantage is the ability to exist fully within themselves, independent of a network. If you want to annoy a Gen X individual, give them a list of arbitrary rules or a corporate vision statement. Quote, "They have a deep-seated psychology of hating rules." End quote. This stems from growing up during an era of profound institutional failure, the Cold War, the rise of divorce, and the realization that experts were often wrong. This created a cynical filter, They are naturally skeptical of authority and hustle culture. They possess a shadow that rejects social norms in favor of raw, practical truth. This cynicism isn't a negative trait. It's a tool for spiritual discernment. It allows them to cut through the sensory static of the modern world and focus on what actually works. They are often lazy but ambitious in a strategic way. They won't waste energy on useless tasks or performative work. But they will work with incredible focus when a task is meaningful or high stakes. Their cynicism is their shield. It protects them from being manipulated by the noise of the crowd. They don't follow the pack. They observe the pack from the internal vantage of the sidelines. The most famous Gen X phrase is a single word: whatever. While critics call this apathy, psychologists see it as a form of stoic detachment. It is a defense mechanism built from a lifetime of witnessing things not going according to plan. When you grow up with the potential paradox, the feeling of dreaming big but being told the world might end in a nuclear war, you develop a level of emotional distance. This detachment allows them to stay calm in situations that would cause younger generations to spiral. They have an inner fortress that remains untouched by external chaos. This is also why they are often people who go quiet when they're hurt. They don't seek external comfort because their latchkey upbringing taught them that they are their own best protectors. They process pain internally, coming to a union with God or their highest self through solitude rather than a group huddle. Their whatever isn't a lack of caring. It's a declaration of resilience. It means, I have survived worse, and I will survive this too. Perhaps the most unique psychological trait of Gen X is their role as the bridge generation. They are the only people on Earth who remember the before and have mastered the after. They learned to use a card catalog and a search engine. This created a specific neural sophistication, the ability to switch between deep, slow analog thinking and fast-paced digital processing. Within this group is a sub-niche known as Zennials, born between 1976 and 1985, who don't feel like they fit into Gen X or Millennials. This bridge status gives them a panoramic vision of the world. They understand the mechanics of how things are made and the digital systems that govern them. This is why many Gen Xers are the people who know how to fix everything. They don't just see the surface, they see the internal blueprints of life. They are the silent architects of the modern world, holding the analog values of privacy and loyalty while navigating the digital age with a skeptical eye. As parents, Gen X occupies a strange psychological space. Having been the children who grew up too fast, they are often hyper-aware of the absent father or unhappy family effects. Gen X parents are often the buffer. They attempt to heal their own inner brokenness by being more present than their parents were, yet their rugged individualism still leaks through. They tend to be pragmatic parents. They want their children to be safe, but they also want them to be tough. They are the ones teaching their Gen Z and Alpha children the value of life offline, even as they hand them a tablet. They are navigating the psychology of grew up with critical parents by trying to offer the praise they never received while still expecting a fixer instinct from their kids. Their parenting is an act of reparative psychology, using their traumatic intelligence to ensure the next generation is resilient but not as lonely as they were. Generation X might be the forgotten generation in the media, but in the real world, their resilience and quiet winning are what keep the wheels turning. They are the last of the rugged individuals, a bridge to a world we will never see again. If you're a Gen X viewer and this felt like a mirror, hit that like button. It's a signal to the algorithm that the invisible generation is ready to be seen. I want to hear from you. What was your latchkey moment? Or if you're a younger generation, what's the most Gen X thing you've seen a parent or mentor do? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you're ready to discover the 7 signs you have traumatic intelligence, make sure you're subscribed. We are opening the window into the hidden patterns of the mind right here at Dong Psychology. The world might change, but the internal vantage stays sharp. Don't be afraid of the whatever, it's your greatest strength. Stay sharp, stay independent, and keep looking through the window. We'll see you next time here at Dong Psychology.